A Swift Kick in the Ass, episode 50.
All big changes start with a swift kick in the ass. Join the journey of lifelong friends, John Curren and Tom Stewart, as they make conventional thought bend over and take a boot to the keister. Warning, listeners may notice a force equal to or greater than needed to get your ass moving. A swift kick in the ass, living life on your terms.
Welcome, I'm Tom Stewart, and I'm joined with my lifelong childhood friend, John Curren. And today we talk about one habit that will refocus your life. Hey, John.
Hey, Tom. This is going to be an important episode for everyone. I think we're going to talk about something that, if you can make a habit, it will absolutely change your life in the most positive of ways. Recently, I've been going through these old videos of my college years, New Year's parties, and just to kind of give you a sense of what's in those videos, the New Year's video is called New Year's Evil, and we had about 10 years of all these videos.
This is not like satanic stuff, right?
No, and there's no satanic stuff. I mean, we did make a horror movie though. It was called New Year's Evil.
Horror or horror?
Horror.
Horror.
Yeah, there were no horrors in the, well.
Okay, well,
Yeah, but anyhow, so it's such a reminder of how young and stupid I think we can all be, even if we look at the way we act and some of the things we've done. But these choices that we made at that time, back in our youth, seemed really good at the time. And it didn't seem crazy. It didn't seem dangerous. It didn't seem nuts. But, in retrospect, I think all of us can relate to those choices that we made that maybe weren't so good. Maybe they didn't pan out as well, and they weren't so good for you in the long run. And that's really what this episode is about. It's about choices, and how it's not about how to make better decisions or how to make better choices, but it's recognizing that we can't control anyone but ourselves. We can only make choices for ourselves, and we need to think about them and take action and then repeat. Think about them some more. You
really just figure out that decision making, it really decides your destiny. It decides where you're going to go. I mean, you can think back of at least something that you've done in your life that has changed the whole path of your life, right? That road less traveled. The thing that, for me, it was maybe joining the military when I joined the Air Force. My whole life would be completely different if I had not joined the military.
Yeah, there is a difference between making a choice and a habit. Now, choices can become habits, but just so we're clear on definition, a choice involves making a conscious decision, based on the merits of the different options that are available to you and selecting either one or more of them. These choices can be imagined options or real options even. Now, habits are things that we do that we don't consciously think about. So we could make a choice and make a conscious decision to do something that becomes a habit ultimately. And like you said, we make these choices and they impact our lives. I mean, we are a product of our choices. Now, we all learn in different ways. We all make both good and bad choices. And from the day we're born till the day we die, we make choices throughout our lives. So if you made bad choices, I know for one, I sure have in my life, plenty of them, but it never stopped me from the next, set of decisions where I could potentially make a good decision. So, don't be too hard on yourself, I guess is what I'm saying, is if you've made bad decisions, tomorrow's another day to make a good decision.
Hey, I'm going to test you right now on your rock and roll ability, right? I'm going to mention a lyric, and I know you're going to get this right away. You can choose a ready guide in some celestial voice, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice.
Rush, free will.
That's it. Nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great song and such a great, great lyrics that Neil Peart put out there. But, so if you choose not to decide, you've still made a choice. There are always choices. There are always options available to us. We might not like the exact options or the exact choice, but you can't not say that those are not a choice. It's just something you don't want to do. And what I have found is some of the things, especially as an adult, sometimes the things that you least want to do will have the best benefit for you. Some of the best choices they're tough choices, and they're not easy to act on, but they're so worth it.
Absolutely.
And thinking about some choices that we regret, Tommy, I'm put you on the spot here because I know that you regret selling some of those Star Wars collectibles back when you're kids.
No. Hold on. Wait, you're selling. You have the whole story wrong.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
I regret blowing them up with firecrackers at the encouragement of my friend John Curren. Only babies play with toys. As I was, entering middle school, and so I blew up the cloth, what was it, Jawa with the cloth cape, right? He had a cloth cloak or something that was worth like $600 to $800. All these rare action figures I had, the first Boba Fett, those kind of things. We burned them and scorched them.
Well, you wanted to, get lucky with the ladies, Tom. So there was an incentive, an imagined incentive.
Well, I made the choice. I made the choice to listen to my friend, and it was fun. We had fun stabbing the Stretch Armstrong Green Monster and watching the jelly come out and blowing up all the Star Wars figures and mangling them up, and throwing Spider-Man up in the tree, those kind of things. After the fact, and I was like, man, I got nothing to play with.
If you think about it, Tommy, we were really scientists at that time because, kind of dissecting Stretch Armstrong, we wanted to see what made him so stretchable.
Right. I mean, looked like grape jelly inside of him.
Oh, yeah.
And if no one knows, I mean, if you're not old enough or weren't around in this country or what have you, when we were kids, they had these guys named Stretch Armstrong was the hero, and then there was this green monster. He looked like the abomination of the Incredible Hulk comic. And they were big, probably about, 12 inches tall, and they're real sturdy creatures. And I would grab one arm, John would grab the other one, and you'd stretch them as far as you could, and it wouldn't break. It would just stretch, and then it would, after a while, you couldn't pull it any further. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, Stretch Armstrong kind of, as I think about it, he was like He-Man, right? He was.
Yeah.
It was a very big toy.
Right.
And man, we tried our best. Tommy and I tried our best to pull that thing apart.
I never had Stretch Armstrong because he looked kind of, he looked kind of weird in those shorts and stuff, all bare chested, but he kind of had a dumb look on his face. Kind of looked like the guy, the cartoon from the what's the Disney one with the four heroes, the Impossibles or the Incredibles, right?
The Incredibles,
right? He looked like the father
Mr.
figure
Incredible.
In there. Yeah, Mr. Incredible.
But I'm so glad that you admitted, on the podcast that you were responsible for your choices. And the truth of the matter is that as much as we like to influence people and have our own way, we really have no control over anyone but ourselves. And that right there is just the key, or the key to this episode.
Can I read something that I carry this? It's perfectly with what you're talking about right now. I carry this in my wallet. I laminated it so I would never forget this, even though I do forget it's in my wallet sometimes. But here's what it says. It says, between the stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our freedom and the power to choose our response. In those choices lie our growth and our happiness. So it's between the stimulus and response that really gives you the freedom to choose. And so, if someone does something to you, you can choose how you're going to react to that. That is our true freedom. Our no matter even if you're locked up somewhere, it is your choice of how to react and compose yourself. So that's true freedom, no matter where you are.
Yeah, it sounds kind of funny. I tell my daughters this a lot, that other people don't make you feel a certain way. They're not making you do anything, really. What they're doing is they're providing information. They might be doing something that you don't like, but you're the one who's interpreting that. You're the one who's has those emotions associated with whatever they're doing. It's kind of a hard concept, I think, to think of, to say, wait a minute, someone's doing something, someone's being a jerk, and it makes me feel bad, but they're not making me feel bad. That doesn't make sense to me. But the truth is that you're allowing yourself to have thoughts and to get caught up about that. You have your thoughts and your own feelings about it. We all do, and it's the one thing that we truly own for ourselves, and no one can dispute your feelings and your thoughts. But we have to recognize is that these thoughts and feelings are our own. No one else can make us feel one way or the other. Think about it this way: someone could be acting like a jerk and it doesn't bother you at all, but someone else acts like a jerk and it bothers you. There's a choice that you are making for yourself to say that it's going to bother you or it's not. And it really boils down, I think, to relationships. And I've been reading this book called Choice Theory. It's by Dr. William Glasser. It's an older book, but it talks about the psychology of personal freedom and choice in our lives. And he says it all boils down to relationships. And I've been, reading this book and thinking a lot about it, and then seeing how these various interactions with other people, are happening in my own life, and kind of thinking about what I'm reading and how it applies. And what's so interesting is how often we try to control one another. We tell people to do this or do that. And if you're like me, you don't like to be told what to do.
No, I agree. I never like being told what to do.
Talking about relationships and control, no one likes to be controlled. No one likes to be told what to do. And we might try to control other people by kind of pushing them into a corner and maybe forcing them to make a decision that they don't want to make, or forcing them to agree with you when they really don't agree with you. That might buy you some short-term satisfaction. It might change their actions in the short term. But if you think about it, in the long term, that's not going to work. You cannot force other people to think a certain way. You can't force them to do things that they don't want to. I mean, think about people who are trying to quit smoking cigarettes. Until they come to that conclusion in their own mind that they want to stop smoking, they're going to continue whether you like it or not. I think we do this with our spouses. We try to control our spouses and get them to do something that they don't want to. It's not going to work. And I think you're better off just not trying to control people. Control yourself and recognize, hey, you know what? I can't control anyone else but myself. And it's okay if people have different opinions. Everyone has their own thoughts and their own emotions. You can't tell people how to feel. You can't tell people what to think. And in this political year that we're in, you certainly can't change people's political opinions. In fact, I've learned you cannot argue opinion. So I don't even try anymore. It's like I might tell people how I think, and I want to listen to what they have to think, but I'm not going to try to convince anyone or change the way they feel, because it's just not worth it.
We talk about decision, and someone, you're talking about quitting smoking. I didn't quit smoking because I never have smoked, but I did quit drinking Diet Coke, and I've talked about this on this show before. But I'm still going strong. It's been over 6 months now that I have not had Diet Coke, and you might sound like, hey, that's no big deal. It's a soda, but what for me it was a big deal. I used to drink 8 cans a day at least. One in the morning when I woke up, another one on the way to work. It was like my coffee. So I was severely addicted to Diet Coke and the caffeine, and people, my wife would always say, that stuff's not good for you. It will make you go blind and absent-minded and all these other things that have never been proven, but then there's always this big debate. It's like, well, is it good for you? Or obviously it's not bad for you. But my doctor said, hey, there's nothing wrong with drinking Diet Coke. But after years of people hounding me, I was like, finally to myself, I was like, you know what? I don't care. This is my one habit that I have. I'm going to drink Diet Coke. But I was driving down the street one day and I saw a billboard, and it was a Coca-Cola billboard. It says something like, like Coke is happiness. It didn't say that exactly. I forget what it said, but it was something that had nothing to do with Coke tastes great. It was trying to brand it so much that it was a lifestyle, and it's not a lifestyle. It's a product. And it was a product that I was spending a lot of money on. I mean, a pack of Coke had gone up to, I think, $5 a case, for a 12 pack at the time, so in essence, it's more expensive than buying gas when you think about it per gallon. So I just decided one day, I was just like, you know what? I'm stopping. I'm no more going to drink it. And I haven't had any. I haven't had like an accident. I haven't had a slip back. I just stopped it. And I'm very proud of that. And I use that as my basis to make other change in my life. I can say, I've done that. And for me, that was a big, big, big thing. So, it's just, and it was a choice, and it wasn't made by anyone else. Yes, other people influenced me, maybe making me consciously think whether it's healthy for me or not, but it was my choice.
Yeah. So, Tommy, you just quit cold turkey.
Cold turkey. Went through headaches and depression and everything else for about a week. Felt like I was quitting heroin, and then I was okay.
So, what got you through that? Your as it was getting out of your system. I was trying to use one of the, the junkie terms because you said recovery. It's like you're having withdrawals.
Sometimes people, and when you try to change something like that, sometimes people will go and they'll announce, "I'm going to make this big change." Well, I didn't do that at first because I was, they you kind of give yourself a way out. Like, I'm going to try it. If it doesn't work out, then no one's going to know. No one's going to criticize me. But to myself, I didn't want to go back on my word to myself. And, I was like, I got to be able to make change. I talk about change on this show. We already had a Swift Kick in the Ass, podcast going on. I said, let me live the way that I speak. And, for me, I said, I'm not going to go back. And it couldn't be like half-assed where I could have some here. Even my wife would be like, it's your birthday, have a Diet Coke. No, because if I, that's what happened. I've tried it before in the past and maybe did it for a couple months or if even that long. And it was always something that, we'd go out and I'd have some at a restaurant because, oh, well, there's, what are you going to drink? The waitress is asking you, and I don't drink alcohol per se. So what was it going to have? Water. And everyone's like, water? That's all you drink? But, and eventually you fall off the wagon per se, and before you know it, I'm drinking it all the time again. But I'm not doing this time. Now it's just water, 100%. I'll drink juice or something. I'll drink something that is healthy, but I won't drink anything that's really artificial.
My friend's wife, she gave up smoking cigarettes. She said it's been 3 months for her, and she posted something on Facebook saying, how proud of herself that she was. And why she quit is that she was on vacation and she had an asthmatic attack. She couldn't breathe. And it put her in the hospital for a week. I mean, I think it was actually more like 10 days. She everyone else had to, drive home and vacation ended for them. So they left, and she was up there stuck in a hospital, and she couldn't breathe. She was on oxygen. And that's when she gave up smoking. And, I myself, I used to smoke cigarettes, and it's been over, 16, 17 years, since I've had a cigarette. And I still have urges from time to time about that. I agree with you. I quit cold turkey. I've talked about this before on the show. and it was hell. But I was sick with a cold, so I was feeling like hell anyway.
So you took advantage of that time.
Yeah, and you need to. They say you can build self-control like a muscle, just like we do with working out and exercising, where you build your muscles. You have to start small, and you have to put yourself in a position to avoid temptations. Don't put yourself in a situation like that's going to set you up for failure. But just like you said, Tom, about you didn't want to tell anybody that you quit because you wanted kind of a fallback,
right?
But you didn't want to fail yourself, and that was more important.
Well,
to you.
Here's the thing too. I mean, it's such a gray area. Drinking Diet Coke, is it good or is it bad? We don't know. We don't know if it harms you at all. It might be fine. It's not like, cigarettes. We know cigarettes cause lung cancer. They cause a lot of other problems that, are proven. So, and you could feel the difference when you're off cigarettes. I can't really feel a difference from being off Diet Coke. I haven't noticed anything. The only thing that I've noticed is I haven't been sick. But, God, that could just be because, maybe I'm resting better, or maybe I just haven't been around sick people, but it seemed like I got sick fairly often. I don't know what that would have to do with it. And it might just me, connecting the dots. But I think if you're on a diet and you quit something, say you quit, I've tried to start cutting down on carbs. So I said, instead of all carbs, I said, I'm just going to cut out bread, and you can see a difference right away in your body and the way you feel. But that's not always for a habit. If you're quitting, we talked about pornography, right? That's one of those gray areas. If you quit pornography, is it going to make your life better? I don't know. Maybe it helps you relieve stress, but also it might be taking a lot of time from your daily life. So for me,
no one wants to shake your hand,
right? So, for me to quit Diet Coke, like I said, it's not like it's like I've done this miraculous thing, but for me, it's a step into being able to make lasting, permanent change. And, it's stepping me into another change. I've been, for the last month, we moved our radio stations and consolidated them with our TV station where I work. And so it ate up all my time. I was working nonstop for weeks and long 12-hour days and, sometimes longer than that. And I said, you know what, let me take advantage of this because I'm always going, I'm on my feet and, I'm trying to rush out of the house. Let me make the change where I stop eating. I used to like eating a sandwich for breakfast. I know it's kind of weird, but that, for me, it was easy to throw some lunch meat on a piece of bread and, eat it. So I quit doing that. And I said, I'm going to cook some eggs, no carbs in the morning, the rest of the day, I'll try to watch what I eat, but I'm not going to go 100%. I'm going to make one small little step towards the right direction. And within a couple of weeks, I had lost like 10 pounds already. So, it's those little small changes and that if you can, those small wins we've talked about before, if you can make a small win, it sure does help you move forward.
What you just talked about, Tommy, was postponing things for later. Like you said, and you started out in the morning with eggs instead of, having a sandwich. And that gave you that win that you needed, and then you could continue it on. I feel the same way. I've been doing push-ups, daily push-ups now for several months, and I have to do it in the morning. When I roll out of bed, but I don't do it immediately after I roll out of bed because if you try to do push-ups, if you have morning wood, as a lot of men would, it really limits your range with your push-ups.
Okay.
So I use the bathroom first, and kind of brush my teeth, and then I hit the ground and do some push-ups, and it sets me it sets me on a right course for the rest of the day. It's amazing because in your mind that you've accomplished something already. You've only been up for 15 minutes, and you've already done something positive, something that you wanted to do.
I know my wife is a big proponent of exercise in the morning. For me, plus now I'm waking up at 3:45 in the morning to go to work because I have to be there at 5. So for me to work out in the morning is not going to happen. But, I know that I've done it before. And if you work out in the morning, then it prevents later on being fatigued and, it's easy at the end of the day to say, I'm not going to do it. I'm tired tonight. Or, something comes up, someone asks you to go somewhere, or something's on TV you wanted to watch, and, or you ate a big dinner and I'm full and I want to, I can't go to the gym now. So it eliminates all that out of the way. So morning, it is a great time to work out if you can do it and have time to do it.
It boosts your metabolism as well. So you have that increased energy all day. Now for me, I'm just talking about doing push-ups. And so it's a minute worth of exercise for me in the morning. But man, it has just, I've been getting all sorts of compliments, and, my wife is like, wow, she's like, you look really good, honey. And to me, that just motivates me, even more to do other exercise as well. Postpone things for later to gain focus on what's important is a good way to do it. I'd like to go back to what you talked about, the diet. And for a while, I tried the paleo diet, which if you're not familiar with it, it's basically you try to eat what the cavemen used to eat. So you avoid any type of flour. You eat a lot of meats and green vegetables and, things that you would forage as a caveman. No one really knows what cavemen eat or ate, but, someone had a thought to say, okay, this is what the caveman ate. So they go with it. But when I was doing that, I gave up flour. And I will tell you, it gave me immediate energy, which is crazy. It was like I gave it up, and I started feeling differences. And in fact, if I ate a little bit of flour, after I had got it out of my system, I'd actually get sick to my stomach. And I was never, gluten intolerant or anything like that. But, I didn't realize how much it affected me when I was consuming flour on a daily basis. Now, I did go off the wagon on that, if I'm to be just brutally honest about it. But the reason why I started eating flour again was it interrupted my sleep pattern. I'd wake up, after I'd sleep for 4 hours, and then I would wake up and I'd be wide awake and I couldn't go back to sleep. And, after like 2 months of going through that and it wasn't getting any better, I was like, maybe if I eat a little flour, here, maybe that will help me. And,
I did a diet very similar to the paleo diet, and it was it's the primal. The only difference is they allow limited milk and dairy, whereas the paleo diet doesn't allow that. I did it when one of our jiu-jitsu competitions was coming up. It was a big one out in California called the Pan Ams, and I fight as a lightweight. Well, at the time, the lightweights are about 155 pounds, right? So at the time, I was probably like weighing like 175, getting close to 180. So I did that for, a couple months, and I dropped down to 156, 157, right around the range that I had to be, in order to compete. And kind of like that part where I was saying where you fall into bad habits, I had made it. I had made such a change that I could start getting away with eating some pizza and some burgers here and there and fries, and I wouldn't gain any weight. I was like, oh man, my metabolism's back. Like when I was young, I can eat anything. But eventually, it crept up on me, so I didn't stick with it. Rather than falling off the wagon and just getting back on, which is what I advise, I didn't do that. I just went and said, hey, yeah, I'm okay. And before you know it, all of a sudden my pants are fitting tighter again. And it's like, I'll just, I'll go to the gym a couple more times. And no, it doesn't work that way. I guess, you get comfortable and then you go back right up to where you were. So it is difficult to, you got to make it a lifestyle. And I guess I hadn't made it enough of a lifestyle because, I eventually gained weight again.
Yeah, I feel the same way about cigarettes. I mean, even after having been quit for such a long time, I recognize that if I have one cigarette, I'm going to go just be right back in that habit, even after, over 15 years of doing that. And the reason why you quit is just as valid, 15 years down the road as it is the day that you quit. I think that applies whether you're, giving up cigarettes or you're giving up something else, burgers and fries and
Right.
food.
And with that paleo diet, the thing too is it took me about a good 2 weeks before I actually adjusted, like you were talking about,
Yeah.
from your body gets used to burning carbs for its energy. So I'd go in and when I'm practicing jujitsu, I would depend on those carbs, when it came time for us to roll, which is like our wrestling time, right? But for like 2 weeks, I was like real lethargic and had a hard time because I felt like I needed carbs. But after that 2 week period, then your body starts utilizing your fat. So it starts burning your fat rather than carbs for energy. And I think that's what really takes the weight off you. I guess I need
Yeah.
to revisit that sometimes. But, like I said,
I
small
don't know
changes.
if
I start with bread instead of just all flour. I'm start with bread at first because that's where I actually consume most of my flour.
It's interesting. I was saying paleo, but maybe what I was doing more was the primal, because I drank milk.
Yeah, with the paleo, you're allowed milk, cheese, butter, so you can take some vegetables and cook them up in some butter. But definitely you get rid of the flour.
It's I don't care what you call it. If you're trying to change things, then taking small steps. Now, when I was, and the reason I was doing that was for my own health, and I made a lot of different changes. But one thing I learned is that my blood pressure went down. Now, I always had, for a very long period of time, since I was in my 20s, I had a high normal blood pressure. So it was not anything I needed to be concerned about. I didn't have to take medication or anything like that. But, it was still higher than it should be. It wasn't at normal. And when I gave up sugar in my coffee, it took me I had made so many changes, I wasn't sure what it was, but it was just just drinking my coffee black instead of with sugar. I believe that's what dropped my blood pressure down, and it's perfect. It's perfect, and it's great. But sometimes you make changes in your life, and until you make the changes in your life, you don't really know what it's going to do, or what for you, or not do for you. So therefore, again, think, act, repeat. Live and learn. But Can I play a little
thing I found on YouTube that talks about decision making? It's one of those motivational movies that people make. But I thought it's kind of inspirational, and our audience might like to hear it.
Sure.
It's titled "Make a Decision."
Principle. You got to hear it. You can't make a difference until you make a decision. So, for real, some of you, man, you keep crying. You complaining about your job. You complaining about where you are financially. You complaining about your relationship. You complaining about your opportunities. You complaining. Listen to me. You murmuring and complaining. You complaining and complaining. Shut up. Stop complaining and do me a favor. If you want to make a difference, all you got to do is one thing. This is how you get started. You want something different? Listen to me. All you got to do is make a decision. That's it. And for those of you who've been making the wrong decision, all you got to do is make the right decision. But if you want to make a difference, make a decision. Are you hearing what I'm telling you?
Truth, right?
Yeah.
You still with me, John?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I thought you were going to say something else after that. I thought you were going to drop some wisdom on me. But no, I thought that, I think that was very valid and very on topic for what we were talking about today. So hope they enjoyed it.
Yeah. I could still hear it.
Oh, that's unknown to our audience. It's just the way I have my mixer set up. John was being fed a pre-fader feed, so that's why he was out of it. I was like,
dude,
did we lose our connection again, man? Where'd you go? And now I understand. Sorry, that was my bad.
It's like, I'm trying to listen, and I'm
talking over it. Man, come on, dude. It's actually it's a 4-minute video. I didn't want to play all 4 minutes on our show. If you want to look up on YouTube, just type "Make a Decision" motivational video, and you'll find it with no problem.
So I liked what he said, and it really, if you're trying to make a change and it's not happening for you, there are two things that you could do. It's really, really simple. You can either change your expectations of what you're trying to do, or you can change your behavior. It's really simple in that way, but we know the reality is quite different. If you're trying to lose weight, there's a simple formula you can follow. You basically eat less, you exercise more, and you're gonna you eat less, you take less calories in, and you give out more calories than you're bringing in. But you're going to lose weight each and every time. It's foolproof. But we know reality is not like that. It's much more difficult.
Yeah, change is very difficult. It's not an easy thing. That's why we advise taking it small and taking small steps and building up to it.
Yeah. So, if you're trying to change, be prepared to live with that choice. And when I was reading about this, I was thinking about when you go on a car lot to buy a car, the salesman is going to pressure you, and they're going to want you to sign on the dotted line and buy that car. You have to go in there prepared. You have to know what you want. You have to know what you're going to pay, and you also have to be prepared to walk away from that deal if you don't want it. Otherwise, you might get stuck with something that you don't want. That's not the right decision for you. But you give in, and then you have to pay for that decision, usually in a monthly payment. But be prepared to walk away from that deal, and you're going to get a better deal because you know what you want. Go out and get it, and don't settle for less. There's some steps you could take to help with self-control. One thing you could do, and I think it's probably the biggest, is manage stress. We don't operate very logically when we're emotional about something. So if you're stressed out, if you're emotional about something, you probably need to take a step back and give yourself a little time, think about things, and don't let that stress and that emotion control your decision making. Second of all, create a plan and then stick with it. I, for one, am extremely excited about this year because at the end of this year, I'm going to be reaching a financial plan that I put in place 9 years ago. I am so
congratulations.
Happy.
That's a big deal.
What my wife and I set out to do 9 years ago was to not owe anybody any money, and have money in the bank. That was our goal. And the first real step of getting there was to pay off all of our debts. And at the end of this year, we're going to have all the debts paid off. And the only thing that we'll really owe is on the house. But since we paid off all the other debts, I'll be able to accelerate our mortgage on that and move forward. So that's huge. And I'm so, it's so amazing to me. And it was definitely small steps taken in that, and a lot of steps that took us off the path, but for the right reasons. Like we moved, we bought a new house during that time. We didn't do anything for our financial plan, but we didn't do it for the financial aspect of it. We did it for our kids so they could live in a better neighborhood, go to better schools. And it wasn't for us, it was for our kids. And now that was the right choice to make. But you can get sidetracked, and that's fine as long as you keep going back and think about, when you're making choices, you need to think about, does that choice bring you closer to your goal or farther away from it? And, while I'm on that subject, I think that I might as well just say, this is why goals are important. So you can make better decisions based on those goals, make better choices. You make better choices when you know where you're headed. We mentioned this earlier as well, especially Tom did, as far as the importance of sleeping, exercise, keeping yourself healthy. You're going to make better choices when you're in a better place, with sleep and exercise and your mental state as well.
You can put the scientific method into making decisions as well. If you look at any science project or anything, I know if, I have a 12-year-old son and I've gone through all these procedures, but there's 3 basic procedures that would help also with the decision-making thing. If you look at the observation phase where they agree on the terms, they figure out what they want to talk about. And then there's the classification phase where they take all the information and that they've learned and they put it in different buckets and try to figure out what goes where. And then there's the definitions phase, which is like figuring out what makes things happen. So take, for example, when man wanted to learn how to fly, right? What do? We observe birds and other creatures that fly. Well, they have wings and they have feathers. So, you see those pictures in the drawings of, or Icarus, the people that make bird wings and they try to jump off high objects. And what do? They crash to the ground because feathers aren't really what made it happen. So by, more by taking all the information and looking at it, they finally discovered, actually it was a scientist that was in fluid mechanics that discovered what actually caused flight. And it had nothing to do with the wings. It was the shape of the wings. So if I remember what that was called, where it gives you a lift, there's a certain definition. So airfoil, that's it. Where the shape of the wing. So when this scientist discovered that, he was doing it through fluid, but he realized that the shape was causing it to cause lift and lift the wing up. So then the Wright brothers got the idea and say, hey, well, let's create that shape of the wing on our structure. They made the first airplane. And they gave it propulsion. So they allowed it to move through the air and had a steering wheel and everything and created the first airplane. So the same thing can be applied to decision making, correct?
Yeah. Absolutely. It goes back to what I was saying before, think about things, look at your choices. A lot of us think that, we limit our choices and that's not really good to do. You might not like the choice, but you need to recognize that is a potential option, and then weigh the pros and cons available. I think on our site, Tommy, we have something to help people make better decision. If you're trying to make a choice, and you have 2 different situations, 2 different things you can aim for. There's a sheet that you can fill out. It's a strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats.
The SWOT analysis, yes.
Yeah, SWOT analysis. And you can write down the good, the bad, and the ugly about that particular situation, about what you think you're trying to do. And that can help you a lot make a decision, because once you start to think about things and writing things down that way and kind of organizing it, sometimes the solution just comes to you out of that process. It makes finding an answer a lot easier, and it makes it kind of, for lack of a better words, just idiot proof. When you look at look at the full picture. Sometimes one picture will pop out and say, yeah, this is absolutely what I need to do.
And if you want that, just go over to swiftkickinass.com, opt into our email list, and that will allow you to get onto our membership site, which is free. And inside there we have courses and the spending tool that tells you how to manage your finances that John has been using for the past 9 years in order to accomplish, financial freedom. So I think there's a lot of good stuff. If you head over there, you won't be disappointed. Like I said, it's a full membership site with lots of stuff, and we're constantly going to be adding more stuff into it. And it's all for free.
Yeah, and we're going to keep on adding to it as well. So I think there's going to be a lot of good stuff out there, especially as we build it. One last thing.
Okay.
I saw of course, we don't have sponsors or anything like this, so this is not a plug for this show, but I got turned on to this new show on all channels, the Weather Channel. I was watching the show this weekend, just kind of was surfing around, and the title of the show caught my interest.
What was that?
It's called Three Fat Guys in the Woods.
I've seen that. It's a funny show. I've actually seen that.
I was like, that title, I was like, it just piqued my interest. I was like, Three Fat Guys in the Woods. What the hell is that? And so, I watched it. What the show is about is the host is a survivalist, and he takes three fat guys and takes them out into the woods for a week. And for the first couple of days, he teaches them survival skills, how to create fire, how to create shelter, how to find water, how to find food. And then they have, after the 3 days, they go out and they spend a night by themselves where they have to create fire. They have to, build their own shelter. And I just found it so interesting. It was really entertaining. But this one guy who was on the show, he recognized that he needed to make changes in his life. And one of the things that he was trying to do was he was trying to quit smoking. And it was great because he just was like, I'm going to be out in the woods. I'm going to be, my mind is going to be occupied with just surviving, and I'm going to quit smoking for this show, or for himself. And it was, I thought that was really great, and I think that's a great approach. If you're trying to change behaviors, do something to take your mind off of what you're trying to do. It'll make it a lot easier. I mean, when you're just trying to survive and you're fighting to, start a fire or to keep out of the elements, you're not too worried about smoking a cigarette.
No, it's not easy. I went through survival training and prisoner of war training when I was in the Air Force. And when I first went to it, I'm from Miami. And when I went, the training was in Spokane, Washington. I had never seen snow. I was 27 years old or 28 when I joined the military, the Air Force. And so, they take you to this mountain and it's snowing. The first time I ever saw snow, and then I have to live in it for 2 weeks. You got to figure out where you're going to get your water from. Like you said, how to build fires, which is not easy. We even had matches, and it wasn't easy. We had matches in our survival gear, but trying to do it with sticks and everything, forget about it, man. Yeah, that's just impossible. But it is. It's very humbling. And when we take so much for granted, having a roof over our head on a daily life. I mean, so many things we have under control that change should be no big deal. I know it's really hard, but when you're put in an environment like that, it's like, man, you got to be grateful for everything you have, because you got to build shelter every night. You got to make sure your socks are dry so you don't get trench foot. All kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah, I think I think if you're trying to make a big change in your life, sometimes taking that kind of big step, can do that. Take yourself out of the element totally.
Go camping. I'm going camping this weekend, and it's, ever since I was not an outdoors person after I went to survival school, kind of made me want to be an outdoor person. So now I'm looking forward. I'm going camping this weekend with my friends and family. We do it every year, and it's more glamping. Granted, I'm not out there primitive camping. We have electricity, so it's actually just like, going in your backyard in reality, but it's fun. It's something different. It's very freeing.
Yeah, Tommy has an air-conditioned tent.
I don't need it because I go camping in the middle of January, and in Florida, it's still, it seems like every time I've gone, it's been in the 30s or 40s. It's just like that freak weather on that weekend. I might get lucky this weekend. It looks like it's going to be like in the 70s, but I kind of miss it because I like sitting around the fire and it's cold outside. I mean, if you have a fire and it's hot outside, it's not the same thing, man. It's fun throwing a blanket around you and having some hot cocoa or whatever people drink around the fire, or, actually they're drinking a lot of booze. But
well, come on up here to Virginia, Tommy, and we'll do some episodes, and we'll sit around the campfire. Maybe we'll do an episode around the campfire.
All right. So we better wrap this up. We could talk a lot more about this. Choices. There's more things to talk about. I have a whole list of notes I never even touched on. But thank you for joining us. And, definitely come back and check us out. Check out A Swift Kicking Ass, like we were talking about before. Join the membership site.
Yeah, and thanks for listening, everyone. We really appreciate it. And please provide us feedback. Tell us what you want to hear.
Thank you for listening to A Swift Kicking the Ass podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's content, and we ask you to please leave us a review in iTunes. Also, head over to aswiftkickingtheass.com to get a free copy of the Simple Spelling Tool.